Howdy folks, welcome to part 4. So I just finished cleaning the chassis. I thought I'd clean it before I start recapping it. So my process for this is pretty simple. It's clean everything you can see and reach. Some people would probably just, clean the stuff that you see, so basically just clean the front. But I think to do this right, it involves cleaning everything. So basically a full roll of paper towels and probably at least 50 Q-tips later, this is what we're left with. The only thing that didn't really turn out was the actual chassis itself. There's a lot of yellow, sort of powdery stuff, but it doesn't really come off. I've scrubbed that with everything I've got, and I can get some of it off, but definitely not all of it. I'm not entirely sure what that is. If it's some sort of corrosion, it must be. I honestly don't know. But everything else came up quite well, actually. The tubes, they all cleaned up really nice. Unfortunately, this one tube here, a good portion of the label came off in cleaning. All the other ones survived pretty well. But this one, unfortunately, I lost most of the label. Now, there wasn't anything interesting on it. I mean, it just said Electrohome. It had no special markings, but it's still kind of sad. But at least, look at them. They're perfectly clear now. That's the beauty of glass. I mean, you can, no matter what burns on there, you can easily get it off. I also noticed after I'd cleaned it that this particular tube here, by the pins, obviously it's got a getter at the top, but it's got a little bit of a getter material deposited right at the base, right around the pins, and the stuff around the pins has gone white, and that scares me a little because it probably means that there's either gas seeping in around the pins or the pins themselves are outgassing. The getter at the top looks fine, so that's why I'm not super concerned, but it's something that I need to note now. These tubes are not cheap, so I don't really want to go out buying a new pair of these if I don't have to. These are both non-matched anyway. They're different brands and different dates anyway. So as I mentioned before, these two tubes have been replaced. This tube down here is a Marconi brand, so it's not original. And this tube down here is a Rogers brand. That's also doesn't appear to be original. I mean, they could be. I don't know what tube models Electrohome actually made or didn't make, but I'm just going to assume that they made all of them, or at least custom branded all of them, which is more likely how it was. They probably didn't make them all. They had them contracted to someone. Whatever. So yeah, cleaned everything, cleaned in there. That's how the antenna turned out. It's all, the wax is that color naturally, so I can't really make that look any nicer. I got all the sides of the cans, the power transformer, and the 2 filter capacitors. Now, I'm going to be replacing these filter capacitors regardless of how they test. When I was doing the phonograph repair, obviously, the phonograph, when you turn that on, it bypasses the power switch. So the chassis turns on automatically when the turntable's on. So this was running, and after that was running for a few minutes, I felt these, and they were hot. Now, they weren't super hot like they were, reforming kind of hot, but they were warm enough that it's cause for alarm that these are dissipating a lot of power. And these things, if they just suddenly go short, they can take out the power transformer, things like that. I don't want to risk it just because they have the full B+ across them. That makes these really dangerous devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out of the circuit, and I'm going to stick modern equivalents on the underside of the chassis, because this one is a 4-section, and this is I think a 3-section capacitor. So there's actually quite a few filter caps in this. I don't think they're all using all 4 sections. They're only using 3 sections of this and 3 sections of this, or 2 sections of this. I can't remember. But modern capacitors with these ratings will easily fit on the underside of the chassis. So I'll just cut these out of the circuit and probably add a terminal strip for the other capacitors that I add. So these will just be purely aesthetic, because removing these makes it look really, just really weird. I want to maintain the look, and I don't want to stuff these. It's one thing you can do is you can cut the base off to basically take the insides out of the capacitors and stick the new ones inside the old ones and then seal it up with some silver tape. I don't really want to do that because a lot of capacitors around this time used polychlorinated biphenyl, so like PCBs, and that stuff is pretty nasty, so I'd rather not come in contact with it. So I'm not going to open these. I'm just going to let them sit. If they're out of the circuit, there's really not much that they can do. So I think we're good there. So I also took the front off. Getting this piece of glass off is a little bit scary. These clips on the top are really they have a little pin that's really deep. So you really got to pry these on the other side to get them out, and the glass makes all sorts of horrible noises. You think it's going to crack, and you have to take these clips off. You can't do it from the bottom because this is part of the actual frame itself. So I got that off, cleaned that under it. Again, this looks like glue of some kind, probably what they stuck this black matting down with. This you can't see when the faceplate is on, so I'm not super worried about that. Clean the cords and all the cables and the dial cord, all that stuff that most people forget about. So in the cleaning, I only managed to break one thing, and that is the FM radio connection. So on here we've got the two wires for the AM antenna, the external AM antenna, and then this basically two wires in a strip for the FM. And one of them had broken off previously during one of the previous parts, and the other one broke off during the cleaning. But it's pretty easy. They just tack on to both of these terminals here. This thing, which almost looks to me like a bodge board. I mean, I know everything's point-to-point wired, but because it's on the top, it's just two components, right? It's a capacitor and an inductor with a it's all, just staked down there. It just, I don't know, it looks like a bodge to me. I mean, maybe it's designed that way. It very well could have been, but I don't know. 1960s bodge? You tell me. I have no idea. So I guess next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath and do a bit of cleaning there, and then I'll actually start checking all the components and making a list. I've already started. Just got to finish that up, and I'll place an order. Okay, I'll make another note that I sort of redact what I originally said about how this is a crappy chassis to work on because there's no position that you can put it in. Now that I've got it on my my workbench here, you actually can set it up right. It turns out that this side, which would normally be to the front of the unit, the dowel cord actually runs on the inside on this side, unlike all the others, and there's nothing on this side, so you can actually stand it up this way and get full access to the bottom and the top. So yeah, I revoke what I said. This actually does have a relatively easy way of working on it. So I've just finished going through all the components in here. Contrary to what I said before, I actually did check almost every resistor, because resistors are easy to measure in circuit. Thought, you know what, screw it, might as well. And I checked most of the capacitors. Obviously, my meter won't check any of the disc caps, the ceramic or mica ones, and that's fine because they're almost always good anyway. So, I mean, it's extremely rare for these to go bad, so I'm not worried about not checking them. Now, my capacitor meter can't check these paper capacitors, unfortunately. They're all too small a value. So I think I'm going to make the executive decision to just leave these here, and only if I find an issue will I get rid of these. I might try a technique that Shango 66 does, which is basically just to feed audio through it and see how much of a high-pass filter it applies to the signal, and then use that to judge how what the capacitance value is, or whether it's leaky or not. I think that's probably the only way that I can test this without having a proper meter. It's one thing I want to look into getting as a meter, but until then, I think I might try the audio method. But I think I'll assume that these are good. These caps here are actually perfectly fine when you take them out of circuit. So I'm going to leave them here. Their ESR is good. The capacitor that I showed before, which had that 25 ohm ESR, I took it out of circuit and it has like a 0.6 ohm ESR, and it's bang on value. And I put it back in circuit and the ESR stays the same. So I'm not sure if I measured it wrong or if this capacitor has an issue where, you know, its ESR changes depending on, you know, how long it's been since it was last charged up. So I might still buy a replacement cap anyway. I mean, they're like just a few cents. And then if I need to change it, I will. I'd like to leave it in there if I can. If it really is good, I'll do that. But I'm a bit worried. Obviously, the resistor that's cracked is getting replaced. And I'm just using tape to flag the connections that are open right now, so that way I remember to put them back. That resistor that I thought looked really hot, it's way out of tolerance. I can't even find, it's supposed to be a 1.5K. I can't find that on the schematic anywhere, which is interesting. It's in between two of the filter capacitors. So I'll have to relook again for that, but that I'll be replacing. So basically, it's just a very small number of components, maybe 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's really small. And then, of course, all the filter capacitors. So the way that I want to do this, the only way I really think I can do it, is I'm going to go out and buy a terminal strip, and I'm going to crank up my iron as hot as I can get it and try to solder a tab to this side here and then have the strip sort of hanging in here. Obviously all these components won't be here anymore, and I'll hang the strip off of it, and then I'll hang all these components here off that strip, and then I'll have some radial leaded capacitors hanging off it as well, and those will serve the function of the mains filters on top. And the one thing you should never do is just hang new capacitors off the terminals of the old caps. That's a no-no. That's a serious no-no, because you get the wrong value, first of all. Not that that matters in a filter, but you get the wrong value. You don't really solve any of the problems with the capacitors dissipating power, and if they short, they still short and they still take out everything. It really solves nothing. Even if they're open, even if those caps are wide open, never ever just bridge the terminals, because you are going to have a bad day one day when they decide to go short. So never do that. So I'm going to attach my own terminal strip and hang everything off. I should have clearly enough room. If I have to, I can tuck stuff down here underneath the power switch. So I don't see having a big issue with that. So I will go get a terminal strip and get the capacitors ordered and the resistors ordered. I might order a few other components just in the order, just for the sake of it, because the shipping is like, you know, 3,000% of what the items cost. So I might as well throw in a few extra things so that I don't have to order them later if I happen to need them during a later stage of this project. So I think that'll be it until I get some more components in.